Hi y'all, it's me, Dion. Just thought I would jump on before I start work and say a few words. Um, well, I found out that I can't get a paid internship for my recovery peer support specialist certification. That I can only do volunteer work. Basically, I did call one place that because they told me if I wanted to get paid internship, I'd have to find a place myself that would allow me to work there and they pay me for my time. So there was one place that I called. It was a customer that came into where I work right now and gave me the information of a place that it's like a place where they distribute medication for opiate addiction, and I called and left a message and told them that I'm trying to achieve my certification in recovery peer support specialism, and that I'm looking for a place that I can do my internship hours. And I told them that I would be willing to work for obviously less than they would have to pay somebody who's already certified. And I told them if they could please call me back, and I left my name and number and stuff. So I'm hoping that they'll call me back, but I'm going to try to get hold of them again either Monday or Tuesday and see if I can speak to the person who's the director there, because I really want to get paid internship if at all possible. And the reason I want a paid internship is because I don't want to wait a year to a year and a half to get my certification. The problem is if I keep the job I have now, I have to work full time because I'm making so little money. I'm making just about minimum wage, maybe $1 more than minimum wage, and I in order to keep paying my bills, which I have to keep paying, I'm gonna keep my phone on and pay rent for where I'm living, and any little things that come up that I may need to get for personal items like deodorant, body wash, those little things that come up that you have to purchase. I have to have income. I have to have income to provide for myself in any way that I can. I mean, the job I have now, I'm not able to pay the full amount of rent that I'm supposed to pay. I'm supposed to pay $250 a week, which equals up to about $1,000 a month. And it's easier to give them $250 a week than it would be to give them $1,000 all at once. At least it's easier for me to do that. I don't know how it would be for somebody else, but it's easier for me to pay that way. But I can't give them $250 a week. The most I can give them is like $150, because after I buy groceries, pay for my transportation for the next week, and keep a little bit of money to buy personals or things that I might need, $150 is about all I can really afford right now, and he's okay with that at the moment. Of course, he'd rather me giving him the full amount, but in all honesty, I'm renting a room. I've got my own private bathroom. It's the master suite in the house. It's a nice room. It's pretty big in size. I love my room. I love my living space. I spent a lot of money decorating it, buying furnishings for it. I love my living space. I really do. Don't get me wrong. But in all honesty, he was asking like $1,300 a month for this room, and I finagled him down to $1,000. But I just don't think in the grand scheme of things that he could get anyone else to pay that kind of money for this room. Even though it's a nice room and it's got its own private bathroom and stuff, and those are all big pluses in my book for what I was looking for, I just don't think he could get anyone else that would pay that kind of money just to rent a room. I mean, private bathroom or not, $1,000 is a lot to ask just to rent a room. $600 or $700 is a more reasonable asking. My son rents a room from somebody, and he pays $700 a month, and it's both him and his girlfriend that live there. And he's got his own private bathroom too. and that seems like a more reasonable asking than $1,000. But because I really love where I'm living, and I'm really close to my 3 youngest kids, they live walking distance from me, I sacrificed it, and I said I'd pay the $1,000. At the time when I rented the room, I had a job that I was earning about $1,000 a week. Not because I was making an enormous amount of money, but because I was working an enormous amount of overtime. I was working between 120 to 130 hours every 2 weeks. And it was the overtime that I was making that got me to make that much money. Because I was only making $13 an hour. I was making the same amount there that I am here. The difference is this place doesn't allow you to do any overtime. You can't even clock in more than 5 minutes before your scheduled time. Because if you clock in, let's say, 10 minutes early, that's an hour of overtime at the end of the week. Almost an hour of overtime. They don't even want you to get an hour of overtime. This place is so cheap, chintzy, and bullshit. I hate this company. I despise this company. I think they're assholes. I think they're total pieces of shit. I mean, anyone, and you have to do so much more here than your average convenience store. In case you haven't noticed, I work at 7-Eleven, yes. I've been here since last November. And the only reason I took this job was because I couldn't get a job anywhere else. I quit my job, and I was working at Terrible Hearst. I don't know if you have those where you live, but I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. And Terrible Hearst is a convenience store with a gas station attached to it. And many of them have car washes attached to it. So I worked there for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. And I got my security license to get a security job. And I got hired at a security company. And while I was doing my 2 weeks notice at Terrible Hearst, so I was going to quit there, they hired somebody else to do the job that they hired me for in the meantime. And they didn't even call me and tell me, we couldn't wait for you with the 2 weeks, so you needed someone to start immediately, and we had to give your job away. They could have called me and told me, hey, if you really want this job, you need to start now. They told me nothing. They allowed me to quit my job, and it caused me to be out of work for right around 5 months. I had to go and get on public assistance again, which I hadn't been on that in several years, and I was really proud of that fact, that I was totally independent and I didn't need government assistance. But I had to get government assistance to buy food because I had no means of supporting myself. Luckily, the man that I rent from hung in there with me and let me stay there, even though I wasn't paying rent. But the methadone clinic that I go to, they help people out with rent. So they gave me a check for all 5 months that I missed rent. They gave me a check for, at the time it wasn't 5 months, it was like 3.5 months. They gave me a check for almost $4,000, which was great. It was really awesome that they were able to do that for me. So I pretty much got caught up in my rent. But I told him when I got this 7-Eleven job that I was not going to be making much money, and I would not be able to pay the amount that I was paying until I'm in a better position, making better money. But he's tallying up all the money that I'm not paying him, that I should have paid him with the rent, and expecting me to come up with this money at a later date. You know, I'm not going to be able to come up with this money. We're trying to get another rent check from my clinic because they said they could help us again. Probably not with as much money as they gave us before, but maybe for a month or two worth of rent. And I mean, he's going to have to be happy with that. I'm giving him as much as I can possibly give him. But asking $1,000 a month, even if he was to throw me out, I don't think he could get anybody else to pay that kind of money. I found his ad on Craigslist. I don't know how long he had the ad there, but I think he had it there for a while. He had several people look at the room and were interested in the room, but as soon as they saw that he was asking as much as he was, they bowed out quite quickly and moved on to bigger and better options. You know, $1,000 is a lot. I mean, that's not even what he was asking. He was asking for $1,300. Which is crazy. What he expects is me to cover the whole rent for the place. The rent is a little over $1,000 a month for where we live. He's expecting me to cover the whole rent, and there's 3 of us living there. There's me, the man who rents the place, and his friend. His friend pays nothing. Now, I take into consideration his friend doesn't have the nice room like I do. He sleeps on the couch in his office and doesn't even have a bed or anything. But he's still living there, washing his clothes there, eating there. He's got a quite comfy situation for someone who doesn't have to pay a dime rent. I don't say anything to him about it because it's not my place, it's not my business. I try to keep my nose in my own lane and not worry about other people, because that's where you get into trouble, when you start butting your nose into business that really doesn't concern you. So I don't say anything to him about it, but in all honesty, it's really bothersome that I'm paying the rent for this place basically by myself, or I'm expected to. I can't pay it right now, but I'm expected to pay the rent, and his friend is living there and not paying a dime. It's bullshit. And I like the guy. I like both of them. I'm quite fond of both of them. I think they're really very nice guys, because I was really questioning what it would be like to live there with 2 guys. The only thing that's a little bothersome to me is that the man I rent from, he doesn't like to wear clothes. Now, don't get me wrong, he doesn't walk around the house naked, but there are times I get up when I have to go to work early in the morning, which used to be every day, but now it's several days a week, and I have to work afternoons several days a week. But I would get up and I'd go to the kitchen, and he would be standing there butt naked. I wouldn't see anything because he'd be behind the counter, and the countertop would cover his private areas. Or he'd be in the living room watching TV naked and cross his legs when I come in. I don't like that. That bothers me. The lady I lived with before him, she didn't like to wear clothes. I don't know what it is, why I can't find a roommate that just wants to wear clothes and be normal. But it's really bothersome to me, especially for a male. I don't want to see your shit. I don't want to see your private area. I'm not interested in that. Okay? I don't ever want to see a man's private area ever again. I am not interested in men anymore. I'm not a lesbian, but I've had my fair share of men in my life, and they've done nothing but break my heart and cause me more drama than they're worth. And I find that men have the good part of everything. When it comes to sex, a man gets to get his rocks off every time he has sex, pretty much, for the most part. I never had an orgasm during sex until I was 27 or 28 years old. And it wasn't during sexual intercourse. It was through manual manipulation. It was just like, I know this is really personal stuff, and I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but I'm just saying, my point of saying any of this is just that men have always gotten the better end of things. And according to the Bible, women have to suffer through agonizing child labor because of Eve's sin, because she tempted Adam and made him eat the apple. Which the whole thing, even though it's a made-up story in my mind, I don't believe there ever was an Adam and Eve. I believe it was a fable that was made up, and that's what I was taught in a Catholic school, that it was a fable that was made up just to teach little kids how the world came to be. But just the story in general is very sexist. How Eve is blamed for the whole thing. Adam ate the apple, and it's Eve's fault because she tempted him. Bullshit, in my opinion. Adam has his own brain. He ate the apple because he wanted to. Or did she put a gun to his head and say, eat the fucking apple or I'm going to kill you? No. He ate it because he wanted to. Whether she suggested it or not is besides the point. It was the serpent that tempted her, and so the serpent was, he was punished by his legs. were taken away from him, and he had to slither on his belly for the rest of his days. That's how the story goes. And Eve was punished by, for the rest of humanity, women would have to suffer through agonizing, painful childbirth. But how did Adam get punished? Adam wasn't punished at all. As far as I'm concerned, men were never punished in that story. Only Eve and the serpent were punished. That's what makes me so angry about the Catholic religion, because they look down on women. Women are not treated as equals. I mean, I watched so many shows, like the show called The Wife Swap. There was a religious family, and in that family, the women were their job was to be the man's helpmate. I'm nobody's helpmate. I am an equal in that relationship. I am an equal. I will be treated as an equal. When it comes to caring for the kids, it should be equally divided. You know, money should be equal. Everything should be equal. I guess I'm a feminist. I guess I'm an enormous feminist, because I feel like we live in a male-dominated world, and women are treated as second-class citizens, and it's bullshit. You know, men get the good end of everything, and they get the good end of sex too. Women, from my experience and from when I've spoken to many women about this issue, they don't really get to have the pleasure of orgasms the way men do, at least not as often. I mean, it was a struggle for me to have any type of orgasmic feeling during sexual activity. And it wasn't during sexual intercourse that it ever happened. He had to manually manipulate me with his hand on the outside, not the inside. And sorry, I don't mean to get so personal, but it pisses me off that the women have to go through the pregnancy, the childbirth, and the whole 9 yards. And I'm grateful for that. And when I think about it, because I have a relationship with my kids that their fathers will never have with them, because I did carry them in my womb for 9 months and, you know, go through giving birth to them. So I don't look at it as a burden. I look at it as a blessing. You know, I'm not at all burdened by the fact. I loved being pregnant, and I cried each time I gave birth, because it was such a momentous moment, and having this child come into the world was such an amazing miracle. It brought me to tears. I just think, I just wonder, you know, if God exists. And my son has been preaching to me that you don't go to heaven unless you fully believe that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and he died on the cross for our sins, and he rose again 3 days later, and he sits at the right hand side of God. But I was taught in a Catholic school that God is neither man nor woman. God is just an entity that is genderless, but everyone always refers to God with the pronoun he. I refuse to acknowledge God as a he, because I was taught in a Catholic school that God is neither man nor woman. So I don't know if I should refer to God as an it. I mean, sometimes I feel like that's disrespectful to call it a it, like it, you know, but I don't believe God is necessarily a man. But when I think about history of the Bible and the stories that were told, and how how women were just, you know, not recognized for all that they do for humanity. Women are the givers of life. We are the ones that bring life on this earth. Any man can plant his seed. It takes 2 seconds. It takes no energy or mental intellect or mental capacity whatsoever for a man to stick his dick in a hole and ejaculate. Okay? And I'm sorry that I have to be so gut-wrenching, brutal about the way that I'm portraying it, but it's just that it doesn't take much effort on their part whatsoever to accomplish that task. I mean, they can do that in a matter of seconds to minutes. And I know this for a fact. I've experienced it. But a woman has to change her whole life around. If she's doing negative things, smoking, drinking, using any type of drugs or medications that might cause harm to the baby, she has to go through all kinds of changes to make sure that incubator, that womb that baby is growing in is the healthiest it can be, to provide the healthiest environment for that baby to grow in. Which, of course, all that makes sense, and I don't disagree with all that, but it's just that a man gets a woman pregnant and he doesn't have to change a damn thing in his life. He can continue on his lifestyle just the way he always has. He doesn't have to change a single solitary thing. Woman has to change everything. And then when the baby's born, it's always just expected that the woman is going to be the one up all night with the feedings, taking care of the kids. You know, women are the ones that raise the babies. You know, men, you know, are never expected in our society to be the one to care for the babies, you know, nurse the babies, the whole 9 yards. I just feel like we live in a society where, even though it's the 21st century and there should be more equality between men and women, we still haven't seen a woman president. We have women that have gone up for presidency and have tried to get the title of presidency, but have not been able to conquer that as of yet. But I'm just pissed off to no end that we live in a world where men have the upper hand. And if a woman and a man get into a fight, the man always has the upper hand because he has the physical strength to overpower the woman. You don't see women going out and raping men. You know, I've heard scenarios where women have seduced men and raped men, supposedly. But I just don't buy into that. When a woman is the victim of assault, and I'm speaking from personal experience because it's happened to me on numerous occasions. I've been assaulted and brutalized in ways that I can't even begin to describe to you. And it's unfair that we don't even have the strength to fight off our attacker and maybe win that fight and save ourselves from an ordeal that could be so terrorizing and terrifying that we may never overcome the horror of an attack like that. I just think we were created very unequal in this world. Men are the stronger, more dominant sex. They can overpower us in any situation unless we have a weapon like a gun or some sort of weapon where we can have an edge over them. But unless we're carrying a gun at our side all the time, we are always putting ourselves at risk of being victimized by a man. I am sick and tired of being a man's play toy for their own sick, disgusting needs or wants. They're not needs. Needs are things that you can't live without. Sex and a man getting his little dick off, that's not a need. It's a want. Okay, and if you can't keep your hormones in check and under control, then go get help for yourself. Because, you know, whether or not I have sex or not doesn't make or break me. I haven't had sex in a long time. I'm just fine without it. I don't care if I ever have sex again, honestly. Because the only man that I ever really loved passed away last August. He was the only man that I ever felt looked at me as an equal and didn't intimidate me, try to overpower me, try to outthink me. We were equals in the relationship, and he was just as much concerned about my happiness in the relationship as his happiness. And that falls in all categories of the relationship, you know, including the bedroom. He was always made sure that during our intimate moments, I was happy at the end of the day, just as much as he was. And I've never experienced that with any other man. Most other males that I've interacted with, it was always about pleasing themselves, and they didn't give two shits whether or not I got anything out of the deal or not. And my ex-husband was number one in that situation. He was always focused on pleasing himself. He didn't give a shit if I got anything out of the deal or not. It was just about him pleasing himself. I know I've kind of gotten off topic here, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean to veer off in this direction, because when I talk about this particular topic of conversation, I guess you could say, it makes me angry. It really fires me up and gets me going and puts me in a mood where I feel upset. I feel angry and upset, and I feel like I feel it's an unfair thing that we as women, who are the ones who truly have populated this earth with humanity, we are the givers of life. We should be the ones out of anything that get to enjoy sexual experiences to the fullest, instead of having to, fight with our bodies to make them work in a way where we can enjoy the experience as much as a man can. It's bothersome to me. It's something that I have battled with and have really had an issue with when it comes to men. I feel it's unfair that a lot of women don't get the enjoyment out of intimacy the way a man does. You don't see women driving their car up and down certain areas of the city looking for strange women that they don't even know, to pay for sexual favors. Whatever they're feeling must be so gratifying and so extraordinarily wonderful that they're willing to risk their safety, their health, and everything else, and pay money out of their own pocket to achieve that feeling from a stranger that could possibly give them a disease, or pull a knife out on them, ruin their marriage, the whole 9 yards. Men risk everything for that feeling. And all I can say is, it must be one hell of a feeling that men go to such lengths to achieve that feeling. I would love to, just for one day, be in the body of a man and know what it feels like to experience what a man does. To be the stronger sex, to be the more dominant, to be able to know that if I wanted something, especially from a woman, I can get it without any hesitation. Most men, or a lot of men, I won't say most, I'll say a lot of men can control their urges, and they don't allow themselves to get to a point where they overpower a woman and subdue them just so they can take what they want from them, and they cast them aside like they're nothing more than a rag doll. Because the man that I was in love with could have overpowered me at any time, but it was never the situation. We were mutually in love, and any experience we had together was mutually desired by both of us. I know that this topic is kind of came from out of left field, but this is something that I've struggled with for a long time, ever since the very first time. I think I was 27, 28 years old, the first time I experienced an orgasm during sexual intimacy. Not sexual intercourse, just sexual intimacy. I have battled with the thought that as soon as I experienced that feeling, I thought, oh my God, so this is what a dude is feeling all the time? And it took me years to feel this. It took me 8 years to achieve that feeling. And I'm thinking, and a dude is getting to feel that every single time he has an intimate moment with a female? How unfair. I felt cheated. I felt totally cheated in that situation. I thought, how freaking unfair is that? That a man can achieve this in a matter of moments. And when I achieved it, it took hours to achieve. It was a long, drawn-out process that took hours. And not to mention, I had to be induced on a drug to have it happen. Doing methamphetamines for me, I guess it's an appropriate topic to bring up because this whole channel is centered around addiction and recovery. And speaking of addiction, I had to shoot meth in order to wake myself up downstairs, because without the meth, I call that area down there the dead zone. I have no real sensation. I don't have any sexual desire. I did with my son's, the love of my life, who passed away. I was very attracted to him. I was very into him, and I desired him more than I have ever desired any other man on this earth. And just being in his presence kind of got me hot and bothered. I mean, to be honest with you. But I've never felt that for another human being. And even though I never had an actual orgasm with him, I'm okay with that, because what we shared together wasn't simply sex. It was truly a love-making experience. I mean, we were in love with one another, and it was not just like screwing somebody. It was truly an intimate moment that we shared because we loved each other. My oldest son was truly conceived in love. We were madly in love when my son was conceived. Every other child that I have, I'm happy that I have all my kids. I don't regret any of them. But none of them were conceived in a situation where I was madly in love with the man that fathered the other 3 children. I was not in love with any of them. One of them was just somebody that I was getting money from for drugs. And he lied to me and told me he had a vasectomy. I mean, my 13-year-old daughter, she's going to be 13 in a couple days. In about 5 days, she'll be 13. And her father's 92 years old, if that says anything about the situation. He lied to me and told me he had a vasectomy. That was just a big lie, because obviously it's a lie if he's her father. And we did 2 DNA tests, and he's definitely her father. Sorry, my face is itching, that's why I'm itching it. I'm not like picking my nose or anything. My face is just itching. I'm wearing this new makeup, and it's called Luminous. It's this airbrush, airspray makeup. It's not as easy to use as they make it seem to be on the infomercials, and I like it, but I don't like it. I mean, you just touch it and it comes right off. It's not the most durable makeup. I got quite a few complaints about it for personally. But anyway, other than that, and my twin's father, I married this man because I thought he was going to improve the quality of my life. When I met him, he had 2 jobs, he had his own place, he had his own car, and I thought he had things going for him that no other guy in my life ever had. Like my oldest son's father, the man I was in love with, he never had his own place, never drove a car, hardly ever had a job, and it was just a joke. But I loved him. I loved it. I loved him. But I didn't love the fact that he was a drug addict. I didn't love the fact that he was hardly ever around, because he was usually incarcerated, or I call it playing hide and seek, because before I started doing drugs with him, I'm so sorry, my face is itching so bad. Before I started doing drugs with him, he would go and hide from me whenever he was using. God, this is driving me nuts. I'm so itchy. He would go and hide from me when he was using, because he didn't want me to see him like that. And as much as I can appreciate the fact that he was trying to conceal his addiction from me, so he wasn't throwing it in my face, it made it difficult for me to try to help him or be there for him. And I realize now, as somebody who dealt with addiction for well over a decade, that there was nothing I could have done to help him, honestly. You know, when somebody is really ready to change their life and ready to make changes, they are the ones that initiate help. They will look for the help, they will get the help, and they will find the resources to make the changes necessary to turn their life around. So me thinking that I needed to be of help to him and I needed to be there to save him was a ridiculous notion. At the time, I just didn't know better. And it was amazing what I discovered when I became addicted to drugs myself. I learned a lot. And what I learned most of all is how little I knew about drug addiction prior to me becoming an addict myself. I mean, I thought that because I was the child of an addicted mother and I had relatives, close relatives, that were addicted, and I saw the aftermath of what they did on the drugs. Yeah, I mean, I knew the effect of drugs. I know how damaging they were. I was well aware of how damaging they were, how they affected my life personally and my grandparents' life. I knew how drugs affected me, being the child of an addict. I knew that much. And I knew how it felt being in love with an addict. I understood that much. But as far as me understanding from the addict's point of view, what it was like for them to actually be in the shoes of an addict and what it felt like to be the one struggling with that addiction, I had no clue. I had no clue whatsoever what it meant to be in their shoes and to be the one dealing with the addiction themselves. I was clueless, and truly I was powerless to help him. Once I discovered this secret world that I knew nothing about, I understood at that point in time that it didn't matter what I did. I was never gonna help him until he wanted to help himself. You can't save an addict from themselves. Only they can. They have to be thoroughly sick and tired of the way they're living, and they have to be the one to reach out their hand and grab help when it's available, if it's available, or find availability. But they are the ones that have to be the first person to address the issue. As much as I loved him and wanted to save him, and I wanted to save him because I wanted to make a life with him. I wanted a future with him. But I couldn't make him do something his heart wasn't invested in. You know, and his heart was just not invested in recovery. He was so entrenched in the drug lifestyle and in the world of drugs that there was nothing I could say or do on my end that would have made that much of a difference, that would have saved him, benefited him, or anything of that nature. And it's a shame that I had to discover the truth about things by destroying my own life in the process. I wanted to have a better understanding of what he was going through, but it's unfortunate that in order for me to gain that information and that knowledge, I had to destroy my life in the process. And that's exactly what I did. I basically, when I decided to try drugs for the first time and join my boyfriend in his addiction and be a partner in crime, because once we became drug addicts together, it only took a matter of a couple years for us to be partners in crime. He would go in garages and steal bikes, power tools, and I would be in the alleyway, being the lookout, making sure nobody was going to ride up on us, police or owners of the property, and find out what we were doing, or catch us, should I say. And I remember the last time that we were involved in that type of behavior, I decided to come back home to Vegas and put an end to what I was doing in Chicago, because that it was happening in Chicago. That type of behavior that I was involved in, because my boyfriend lived in Chicago. And when I came back to Vegas, it was less than 72 hours after I ended up back in Vegas that he got caught in a garage trying to burglarize it, and he went back to prison for, I forget how. He's been to prison, so he had been to prison so many times. I couldn't even tell you how much time he got or what the deal was, but I know he went back to prison for it. And I was so lucky and grateful that I went back to Vegas when I did, because if I had still been in Chicago, I would have probably been with him on one of those trips, and I could have been just as easily implicated in that situation, and I could have been looking at nothing, if nothing else, at least jail time for my involvement, and maybe on some probation, because it would have been only my first offense. But I came very close to being right there with him, with catching charges for what was going on and what he was doing and what I was helping him do. By me being the lookout, I was taking part in the whole process of the burglary, and there were times he would steal 10 speed bikes, and we would both take off on bikes and sell them to the first person we could sell them to get drug money. I think back on those days, and I think back on the life I was living, and it sucked. It really sucked. I mean, that's when I was smoking crack, and that was the most miserable 6+ years of my life that I would never want to repeat, no matter what you offered me. I would never want to relive those years again for any amount of money in the world, because it was a miserable, miserable, lonely existence. And heroin, I can't say was a whole lot better, but at least when I had heroin, I was functionable to a certain degree. It was when I didn't have the heroin that I wasn't functional, because if I couldn't get my heroin, I was going to be sicker than a dog, and it wasn't going to go very well. My day was not going to go very well. It was going to be a miserable, miserable day for me. But it was very rare that I was unable to get my drugs for the day. I always found a way to get drugs each and every day. I could probably count on one hand out of all the years that I used that I wasn't able to get drugs, and that's outside of being incarcerated in jail. I'm talking about when I was outside in the free world doing my thing. I could only think of a handful of times, give or take, that I actually was free and I couldn't score drugs. And the only reason there was ever a reason why I could score drugs, thinking back on it, was one time it was Thanksgiving, and they weren't working, and they didn't forewarn their customers that they would be closed for Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving Day came, and we couldn't get a hold of them for anything. I had my money, I was ready to go, but they were not in business. They did not answer their phone. But lo and behold, the next morning, they answered the phone quick as a bunny, and I couldn't wait for them to arrive with my dope. It was a sick relationship that I had with those drugs. I really felt very crippled by those drugs, because if I didn't have them, I was worth shit. I couldn't get out of bed. I was miserable. I was so miserable without the drugs. It wasn't even funny. I'm so glad to be free from the misery that I lived in that addiction. I've been free from the crack cocaine for like 20 years. I haven't touched the stuff in a good 20 years or better. And the heroin and the meth that I used recreationally. I only use meth once or twice a month with my ex-husband for sexual reasons, and I've already explained why I did that. And I apologize if my very blunt way of expressing myself in this video was at all offensive to anyone. I mean, I always tell people that my videos are for adults and it's adult content, so if you were underage watching this video, shame on you, because you shouldn't have been. But I've been free of the heroin and the small amounts of meth that I did from time to time for going on 13 years.
Could you do me a really big favor? Just stand out here. There's no customers, and guys have a lot of machine in the slots. Really bad.
Okay. Okay.
Because I can't leave them out there.
Okay, guys, I gotta end this video. I will talk to you guys again soon. I gotta get to work. Sorry. Bye.